The views and opinions expressed in these historical letters that may contain vernacular used in the World War II era, the post-war era, and the Cold War era do not reflect the views and opinions of any of the individuals involved with this project, including, but not limited to, the podcast's creators. Good morning, Jamie.
Good morning, Allison.
How are you doing this morning?
Very lovely. It's a lovely day
It
here in
is.
southwestern PA. Is it a lovely day in southeastern PA?
You know, it stopped raining this morning compared to all day yesterday. It was really, really rainy here in Pennsylvania, but we needed it. Sometimes you need the rain. Some areas got too much rain. They didn't need that much. So for those that are recovering from basically the floodwaters from rivers overflowing their banks and things like that, you know, we wish you the best of luck. We hope that you're getting through that time. This is not the first time that's happened in Pennsylvania. It's thankfully not the worst storm that Pennsylvania has suffered with this kind of thing, but we know it's really, really hard. I had family directly impacted by the worst, which was Agnes in 73. So my mind goes out to everybody being affected by flooding. But in southeastern Pennsylvania, in a lot of areas, we did need the rain. It hadn't rained for a while, so it is
Yes,
helping.
it's been a little bit of a dry summer, so it was enjoyable, but it's a beautiful day today.
It is.
It's a beautiful day to get into some letters.
Right. And we're going to go into 1944 here for episode 17. Before we do, I just wanted to give a recap because all throughout 1943, we've gotten a few letters. We know that Bob and Frank are in various operations of the war, but we're not really hearing from Sweetie what's going on during the war. And some of the stuff that's going on, it's just simply that she doesn't have relations to what is happening. But we have to acknowledge some of the really big history that's passed by in 1943 before we go into 1944, because when we go into we're going into 1944. Since we're approaching this year, obviously, everybody should keep in their mind June 6th. That's D-Day. So if you're keeping a mental timeline of World War II, 1944 is when we're going to really have that last push into the European theater really kicked off with D-Day. But in 1943, there's a couple, I didn't want to go into too many because there's so many various things that you could focus on during World War II. The first part of it, really, the beginning of 1943, is what's happening in the Eastern Front. And this is especially why we're not hearing from Sweetie about this, because it's not so clear what coverage is really being received about a theater where the Americans aren't fighting. But we know about it, obviously, so many years later. So just to rewind back to 1941, this is before Pearl Harbor. Germany had not initially fought with the Soviet Union. Not at the beginning of the war. The war starts in 1939. Just like America wasn't in the war at the beginning, the Soviet Union wasn't in the war at the beginning. There had been an agreement not to fight each other because Germany had feared this from World War I, of course, and it makes sense. You don't want a two-front war. You don't want to have to fight on your Western Front and your Eastern Front. But the German forces invade the Soviet Union in an operation famously called Barbarossa. So Operation Barbarossa is the invasion of the Soviet Union by Germany, and this happens on June 22nd in 1941. So just know that that's been going on, and they push into the Soviet Union, and the casualties are just astronomical of the Eastern Front. That's what's going to be called the Eastern Front of the war. And in 1943, on February 2nd, the Battle of Stalingrad is going to end. Now, this is really, really significant because this is a big turning point of the war. Even though the Americans aren't involved here, it's considered a turning point because it's the point in which the German forces are being repulsed from the Soviet Union. Stalingrad is also the bloodiest battle of all history.
Of all history.
All history. 2.2 million casualties or so, thereabouts. The numbers are kind of really difficult to estimate with Stalingrad just because of the records that we're getting from the Soviet Union, from the German forces, everything. But it's estimated about 2.2 million casualties. This is the biggest battle of all time, is Stalingrad. So I felt like we had to acknowledge the biggest battle of all time going on and the big turning point because the Soviet Union calls this the Great Patriotic War, is them fighting back through World War II, is fighting the Germans. So the turning point is going to be the German Sixth Army is going to surrender at Stalingrad, and then the Germans are going to be slowly pushed out. So you're getting a major defeat coming in, where now the focus is going to be, okay, for the Germans, we've lost this critical battle in the East. They're going to really want to hold on to the West, right? Because one of the sides is starting to fold. So that's really important to go into. The other thing is that in the summer, in July, and this is something that Sweetie probably could have brought up, depending on how much she was following it, but the Allied forces, including the United States, invade the island of Sicily. So this is seen as a major turning point because the Allies take Sicily in August of 43, and then on September 3rd of 1943, Italy surrenders. So Italy had been in the alliance with Germany, and so they're out of the war. So we have a major power leaving the war. They're going to surrender, and that's it with regards to the fight against Italy. So those are the two things I wanted to bring up, just to say in 43, these events are going to happen, but they're big enough where we should bring them up before we just move into the letters from 1944, so we can get more of like a vision of what's going on in Europe,
in the world, and in the war. Yeah, the thing that is affecting, that's directly affecting many of the people in these letters. Yes.
Yeah, and are going to affect the troop movements where everybody's going to wind up going. Because if Italy's done, that way you don't have to wonder, well, they went into France, what was going on in Italy? Well, Italy's out. So at this point, now we're going to focus. You can see, why certain areas are going to be focused on more than others at this point. All right, but with that, the very first letter, we have 4 letters, Jamie.
Four today.
4 That's for the podcast today. And kicking off 1944 is not Sweetie, but good Chester Demaree is writing to Frank. And Frank's at the front. We know that Frank is at the front. He's in the Pacific Theater, and we'll just go ahead and get started with that.
Lieutenant Frank E. Demaree, Signal Office, 7th Fighter Command, APO, San Francisco, California. Lacona, Iowa, January 13th, 1944. Dear Francois, I'm still asking you if you want your diary and pencils, etc., that I stated I would like to send to you at your request. I would think that you would need them, and so I am reminding you again for you to request them. Your letter was postmarked January 6th and was received here on the 12th. I believe this is the earliest that we have received a letter from you. However, it was postdated a day or two ahead of that. We are sending most of your letters by airmail and would like to know how long it takes for them to reach you. I do not remember if you ever told us about this, and I would like to know. Jeanne has notified us that Bob's baby is a girl and was born early Monday morning, January 10th, I believe it was. I may be mistaken about this. He thought he would be able to get home about that time or a little later, especially as he was expecting to be transferred to some other station, and thought that he would have a few days here before he left.
All right, so little family updates, some quick messages, little updates to Frank at the beginning here of 1944. Bob has had a baby girl and has come into his family. And that's, of course, Florence. So,
and this is Bob, the oldest?
Yep, Bob, the eldest son.
Bob, the eldest son, has had his
first child.
And so Jeanne was there?
It would seem, that Jeanne was there with Florence.
Yeah,
because now she's graduated, being an RN. She was probably on hand. Chester, wasn't there, which is interesting because Chester is going to have the opportunity to deliver some of his grandchildren, which is really, really great. But in this case, it does seem that Chester's not there, but Jeanne is to help and assist with Florence at that time. But so happy for Bob's and Florence's first child to come into the world. And then
Bob was out, right? He wasn't there for the birth of his child.
He wasn't there, but he's trying to get home. So it's nice to know that Bob's on his way home, it would seem.
We are still having clear and snowless weather. We hope for at least another month of this variety, and by that time, most of the winter will be over. It is a pleasure to ride over the roads, as they are of record smoothness, over the country dirt roads, and they are really better than gravel just now, as they are smoother.
And I don't know about you, Jamie, but somehow I get this idea in my head that Chester's out there doing donuts in a parking lot.
But he's very methodical about it. He's like, the best way to do this would be to go this fast and then to yes.
Yep. Let me test this theory on these roads.
Well, he was getting stuck before with all that snow going to his appointments. So this is, it must be nice.
Record smoothness. Really? How do you know that, Chester? On the roads.
He has a journal and he keeps track.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He has a log of
that kind of person.
He totally is that kind of person.
I was not able to get the clock movement that I wrote you about a short time ago. However, they have some better class movements, and they have written that I will receive one as soon as they can assemble one and test it out. I will probably have it by the time you receive this letter. If the clock proves to be what I want, I'm going to make a good and well-finished case for it, and think that we will have just what we've been wanting for a long time. It is a chime clock which renders parts of the Westminster chimes every quarter. The price of it was $207, but I had them deduct $32.80 for the dial, and that was more within reason. I believe that I can construct a better dial than they could have offered us for that price. I'll tell you more about it after we receive it. I have the opportunity to buy some walnut trees and have them sawed up so that I will have enough walnut lumber to make some furniture and other things that I've been planning for so long. I hope to be able to purchase it for about 5 cents a foot as the tree stands.
Okay. And I just wanted to go back here because he's talking about the cost of the clock. And he spent $207 on this clock.
Well, minus...
He was going to. Minus the certain little amount there.
But still, that's a lot.
He really wanted this clock.
Yeah, that's a lot. I feel like that's like a house or something.
It is. So I have the inflation calculator here.
Oh, okay.
Just so we can hear for such a specific amount what $207 in 1944 is now worth in 2024. So the rate of inflation is 1,685.1%.
Really? No. Wow.
And the item would cost $3,695.13. So this is over a $3,500 clock that he wants to purchase. The value is there. So
I just want to point out too that I'm still wondering about the dining chairs that he promised.
Right. Focus.
Right.
Please,
that's
Chester.
sorry. Maybe that's where, but he's got a lot of things that he wants to build.
He's got all of his little projects. Yeah.
$207 in that day and age. And it does sound like maybe this was something that him and his wife wanted.
Yeah. For a long time.
So yeah, that seems like, but he's like, I could make a better dial than that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can bring the cost down a little bit. Yeah.
We have to when you're spending over $3,000.
Yeah.
In real money, in this money, real money.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, that's amazing that's how much.
That's how much. Inflation, it's like really bad. How much of that was just in the last year?
I love you, Allison. Okay.
All right.
So, moving on.
We are somewhat busy, having had 3 OBs the first 3 days of this week, with the other work as usual. However, the flu has quieted down somewhat, and I think we'll be able to send those pictures before long. I also expect to do some artwork along with this as the days grow longer. We are interested in the bombing and wish that there was more that you could tell us about it. I would think that you could have told us how near they fell around you and whether you could see them before they exploded. It would seem that you could tell us something about some of the problems that you are solving. Do you travel around locally by plane as much as you did formerly? Do you meet up with any other EEs very often? We would like to know if you've seen any correspondence or other notable persons that we have heard of lately such as Clatterborn. I would call this letter a snooper. As to the Reader's Digest, I would state that it is the worst kind of propaganda sheet, and I think it is very unfair and one-sided. Several times it has been proven deliberately misrepresenting the facts. One has to be careful reader at all times to keep from feeding some kind of wolf or fifth column. The president recently put one over the home plate for the Republicans. The old boys are on a hot rock as a result of it. I hope that you are able to read about the situation as it is at present. But I must close, as I have an eye examination to do, as well as other matters to look after. Love, Papa.
Yeah, there's some interesting parts here. Right at the end of the letter, we get this wonderfully dense passage here about what's going on domestically, what's going on the front. And he's providing these messages about some key figures here. So I kind of wanted to break this paragraph apart a little bit, Jamie, in some sections. First of all, we have the humor of Chester, though I don't think he's for us it's humorous. I don't think he's intending it to be humorous.
No.
He's scientifically asking Frank, look, when the bombs were falling around you, could you see them before they exploded? So don't be close enough to them, to get hurt. But if you were close enough to the bombs to see them falling, it would stand to reason you're probably in a very dangerous proximity to them. Could you send an analysis over?
Yes, no way.
Scientific.
He's definitely Chester has this sense where he's very removed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that's how he and he's very removed, and he comes at everything with that attitude that he has. And but I also kind of I'm like, Chester.
Yeah.
Your son.
I would say Frank was focused on other things at the time, like not being near them when they were falling, probably. And not being like, wait a minute, pause, time out. It's sort of like that scene in a movie where you see everybody freeze.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I gotta take notes on this to write home.
Dad needs to know.
Yeah, he's very interested in the technology of how this works. Unfreeze, duck and cover.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
But too, what I really like about this part is how he talks about the Reader's Digest, and he has such a critical eye for it.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And then we see that amazing phrase, propaganda, the wolf, or the fifth column. And that's
misrepresenting the facts.
Yeah.
See, he's smart enough to pick up on this stuff. And he's smart enough to understand how they're turning the words and to elicit a certain response. And he's like, no, I'm the good doctor. I see right through that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you can see the phrase, the fifth column. We don't really hear that phrase too much. That is a phrase that it means I have the definition of the fifth column, or it's called a fifth column. The definition is a group of people who undermine a larger group or nation from within, usually in favor of an enemy group or another nation. So in a wartime scenario, you have a smaller group of people working to undermine a larger group of people to the benefit of the opposing force.
Oh.
Yeah. So he's able to just use this as a turn of phrase right at the time. And it's probably that the phrase, the fifth column, is being said a lot during World War II, during any wartime scenario. But it's an interesting old phrase. And then we get the reference to Kaltenborn here, who was a radio commentator. He was a famous radio commentator. So we see that information. Then we get here, the president recently put one over the home plate for the Republicans. So I'm not exactly sure what he's referring to. But Chester's a Democrat. The president's FDR at the time. I believe what we still have... it's not until 1945. This is still... Truman's not in yet. So, yeah. But he's a Democrat, and he's saying... the old boys are on a hot rock as a result of it. What we see here is Chester's following politics. Mm-hmm. So he's invested in it. He wants to know what's going on. As you said, a big piece of that is going to be following what the media is saying. And in this case, he does not trust the Reader's Digest.
No, he does not. Chester is definitely a Renaissance man. He has interests and he's very proficient in so many things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and having, I mean, he's a smart man, and to see like that he understands how the Reader's Digest and how the media is being used to spread certain propaganda and being able to see through it. But also, like, even through the rest of the letter, like, he's going to build part of a clock, a very expensive clock, a clock that, like, it would, like, I think a normal person would not feel comfortable working on.
No, yeah.
You know, or a normal person, a lay person would not feel comfortable working on such a expensive piece. But, and he definitely does. He is, he is very well versed in many different subjects, and that comes across in every single letter we've ever read from him.
Yep. All right, and that concludes that letter.
Yes, that concludes that letter, and we are in, and that is our first letter, 44. First letter 44. Yes.
All right, and then we're going to go into the next 3 letters that we have. Now, these are some shorter letters here, but it covers really the time period of February 1944, and this is Sweetie writing to Jeanne. So, back to Sweetie. Ottumwa, Iowa, February 2nd, 1944. Dear Jeanne, don't tell me that you're going to lapse back into the no letter today habit. That is bad. Who knows? You might still be on that bus. First, did you send the pictures home to Daddy to be reprinted? I hope. If not, would you please mail them to Daddy? I've already written to him about how many to print. Second, you did not help me figure out the rhythm theory. That I don't like, and now there's nothing I can do about it. Lou is on 48-hour liberty, and he is enjoying himself no end, making little messes and walking off, leaving them uncleaned. Tomorrow through Thursday and Friday are standby duty nights. I'll have to use it to clean up cigarette ashes, filings, and dirty socks. I've been working on a dress I'm making for me, one of those blue jumper jobs with embroidery. Lou says if I get it done in time to go to Philadelphia, I must take it along to prove I'm not worthless. Yesterday, he said he had a feeling that Bob was coming, so he picked up some of his stuff and stuffed it. Woe is me. I will have to clean out and give him another dresser drawer. Right now, I have fallen out of his lordship's graces, and am rather uncomfortable. The fault was mutual. Maybe we can make amends the same way. Do not mention this, or I'll haunt you. I don't have much time, so I'll stop now. Do write little, just for fun. Love, Sweetie and Lou.
Well, that was a nice, short little...
Yeah,
I like that. But, you know, it's kind of funny. So it seems that there might have been a little tiff. Or a little something that happened, just a little one where they're like maybe having a little fight. But she said, you know, that's fine. You know, she understands the fault was mutual. Yep. So there was something that went on, and I'm sure Jeanne probably has a little bit more insight. But here too, what else did she say that I really?
The dress.
You did not help me figure out the rhythm theory.
Yeah, not sure what that's about, really.
Well, so the only thing that I could think of that I when I read this was like the rhythm method, which is a method of birth control that revolves around cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe perhaps as a nurse, she was supposed to help her figure that out, and they didn't.
Yeah. Well, that's an insight I would not have.
That's a little insight, maybe that like something happened later. I don't know. Yep. So, but yeah, I thought that was interesting too. And of course, she did start it out in Sweetie style, like, so you're not writing me letters?
Yeah. Where's my communications? I'm here at the base. No one's telling me what's going on.
Yeah. So this was a cute little letter,
and we also get that little part about Philadelphia. Something's being planned here.
Yes, and yes, I have to take it along to prove I'm not worthless.
Right. Yeah, I have value. I can do things.
Yes. So that was a nice little February. Like, we're into it, and maybe they had their first little fight.
Yeah.
Nice little update for Sweetie and Lou.
And the next letter here is going to be, we're going to proceed into February 8th. Now, this letter originally was not dated. There's a note that'll appear on the screen. But luckily, Sweetie's going to she's going to reveal the date of the letter within the letter itself. So it's one of those little moments that makes me so happy of just, Well, it wasn't dated, but then we worked it out, so it has to be February 8th. Ottumwa, Iowa, February 8th, 1944. Dear Jeanne, well, how's this for reversing procedure? I did it accidentally while I was wool gathering. Besides, I'm pretty tired. Lou caught a cold Thursday. That was his standby night, and so I stayed to see a movie with him. He was coughing pretty hard, looked awfully pale, and was feeling pretty rough. Friday was duty, and he started watch from 3 a.m. till 7 a.m. He called me up and sounded pretty hoarse from a coughing. Saturday, he got home with chills, a fever, and sore throat from coughing so much. I fed him right away and put him to bed with a hot water bottle and a heating pad, gave him aspirin, no cough medicine. Finally got him warm and broke the fever. He started sweating and just drenched the bed. By morning was normal, and he got up and went to work. He went up on a hop, not once but twice, 2 hours, and came home Sunday at 7 with a fever again. He coughed nearly all night, and as a result neither of us slept. I've caught some of it from him, a cough, not a head cold like I usually get. He refused to go to sick bay, 'cause they'll put him to bed there and he can't come home. He's better than he was, though, so I guess he'll be all right. A day or 2 in bed would fix him, though. I had to string up a clothesline, take everything, pillows, blankets down to, and including that mattress pad, out to air dry in sun, then make up the bed and do everything else that had to be done. And he goes up in an airplane. Could I stand it? I swear, after just 2 months and 4 days, I could write a book. I married an idiot.
She's so funny.
Yep.
But this is so sweet. I mean, and it's so nice that she has that background that she can take care of him, knows like how she needs to take care of him.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it's just, like such a sweet thing to like take care of your husband and stuff. And he didn't want to go to sick bay because he's like, well, then I wouldn't be here.
He didn't. And this is going to be a thing in future letters too. If you can avoid sick bay and you have a home to go home to, you avoid sick bay as much as you can. So this avoidance of sick bay thing is going to be an ongoing theme. He's like, I'm well enough that I can just get home. You can imagine he probably looks really bad at the base. The other guys are probably like, yo, dude, you got to go to sick bay. Like, why would you give this to your wife? You know, whatever you've got, you need to spend a couple days in bed. It's like, I don't want to go to sick bay. Yeah, it's really a big avoidance here. But yeah, she has the fun with it. Like, then he goes up in a plane. You know, he's sick and then he goes up in a plane. I married an idiot.
I do. That's funny. You can't tell them what to do. They just do it. Just let them do it.
We've been married 2 months and 4 days. I got 2 bright red roses, as much a peace offering as a remembrance of our anniversary. Bob and Mom and Florence and KM came down Wednesday. The roses came on Wednesday too, since Thursday was Lou's standby night, and he wanted to be home when they came. The folks saw them and thought they were very nice. They came straight to the base, since they thought Lou would be on duty. Bob came in to find me. It must have been about 2:30 or 3. We went to the commissary store to buy Mom some cheese, and from there to supply for Bob to meet Commander Painter and check out his flight gear. We had to carry a Seaman guard around with us, but he wasn't bad, and Bob didn't care. We left here at about 4:45 and got home to find Lou had cleaned up in a hurry. He'd been painting the little bookcase and had to put it back together, though it was still wet. Rather than put things back on it, he stacked them behind the Davenport. Don't you know, Bob would walk behind the Davenport. He was all freshly bathed and shaved and dressed in his clean blues, and he did look very nice. Mom had brought fried chicken and apple pie and green beans already cooked, so all I had to do was cook potatoes, make coffee and gravy, and heat chicken and beans. We substituted pickles for salad. Mrs. Cory whipped up a pudding before I knew they'd brought pie, so we had 2 desserts, both good and both eaten. They left here at about 10 o'clock. We took the kitchen table in the dining room and all sat down comfortably. Lou liked Bob immediately, and Bob liked Lou too. I was so pleased I nearly popped. KM is a darn cute baby, isn't she? You should have seen Lou hold her and talk to her. It's amazing. He says all our kids will be red-headed, since both his dad and mine were red-headed. Tonight, I'll hurry home to iron before Lou comes home to supper. He'll have to go to bed early to get rid of that cold. I'll darn socks and listen to the radio or the embroidery. Right, little chum, won't ya? Love, Sydney and me. Okay, so this is a really big moment for Sweetie here. And we get to really enjoy just the fact that Bob is home. You know, he's been at the front. He's finally catching up with things going on with family. And there's this visit to Ottumwa. And her brother gets to meet, for the first time, his new brother-in-law. And they get along really well.
Like, yeah. That's so nice. Mm-hmm. And you know, and she's obviously happy about that. Of course, that's what you want. Mm-hmm. You want your family to get along.
Yeah.
So they also got to meet the new baby.
They got to meet the new baby. So Florence has the little girl, KM. Mm-hmm. And then we've got these moments at the base. Bob actually gets to go out to the naval base, which is interesting because Bob, he's flying. He's enjoying flying. We know that he'd done flight school and he'd been his ups and downs we heard about earlier in the very early letters of what Bob was up to. And he's talking to the commander. And Commander Painter had been the one who I think gave the $20 as the wedding.
Yeah, he gave, yes, for their wedding.
Yeah. And then we have the Corys there too. So there's a really big gathering going on right now.
And a lovely little community, like a little with the Corys and like those at the base so she definitely they definitely have like a little life here, a little family.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, so it was very nice for Bob to come in and see. It's probably nice for Bob too to see how well his sister's doing. And to like, I'm sure that actually thinking about it now, he's probably very happy. Like, oh, good, you married a good man.
Yeah, like, oh, okay, check. Like, not scumbag. Yeah,
right.
Seems to be not scumbag.
Well, you married a naval man.
Yeah.
So like, yeah. It just but yeah, you can definitely see like this was a nice gathering.
Yeah, and we've got the two little red roses that are out there. You know, and she's like, oh, look, my husband gave me these because it's our 2-month anniversary. So he really cares. One of the things,
he's such a romantic too.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. But one of the things here that really speaks to the letter, and it can be tricky to notice, is not so much what's written in the letter, but what's not written in the letter. There's a person missing from the scene. If we go back to it, she lists out everybody who's there. The Corys are there. They're visiting the base. We go back to, I think it was the previous screen. I'll actually run the screen back here so that we can see this. I'll run back the video.
Okay.
Yeah, here we go.
Okay.
Bob and Mom and Florence and Cam came down on Wednesday. Somebody is missing from the scene, and it doesn't.
Is it Chester?
Sense. Chester's not there. Mm-hmm.
Why is Chester not there?
Why is Chester not with the group? Now, he is the town doctor, and maybe he just couldn't get away from town. But Laura, his wife, is almost always his assistant. If there's something really serious going on where he would need help, his wife would have stayed home with him. I'm convinced she would have stayed home. So I don't really think that's the case here. So why is it that Chester's missing? And we never really get an explanation as to why he's not in the scene, because he was there for the wedding. He's met the Corys before. We know that the parents were there. So nothing against the Cory family, nothing against Lou. He was there for the wedding. And there's some suspicions here that have to be raised. And I don't want to think ill of people, with things not stated, of course. But there's a dynamic that's going on between Bob and Florence and Chester that's not the most comfortable.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Bob married a Catholic.
Yes, he did.
And Chester is very Presbyterian. Very Presbyterian. And so we can only suspect just a little bit. And maybe there's other explanations there could be for his absence from the scene.
Mm-hmm.
But it might be that there's a bit of not getting along between these parts of the family. And of course, Laura being the mother, she's going to go with the new baby and go visit Sweetie and Lou and meet the Corys and do all of this. I find it hard to believe that if there was some sort of medical crisis going on at Lacona, that she wouldn't have stayed back. Or if Chester was sick, that she wouldn't have stayed back, just like Sweetie's taking care of Lou. I think there's something going on here between the relationship of Bob and Florence and Chester. So as much as, we hear that first letter from Chester. Chester's great. But this seems to be a bit of a fault that he's not here.
Mm-hmm.
And so hopefully this is relieved. But the only thing that historically we can look back to in the letters is this bit of tension between the religious denominations.
Mm.
So I hope it's not that. I hope there's another reason that this happened. But I have to suspect, this letter says a lot by saying nothing, right? The absence of the thing speaks loudly. She's writing it to Jeanne. She could have just said the folks and Bob and Florence and the baby came. She didn't. She listed out individually who all was there.
Yeah, it seems so. When you just to kind of delve into it a little bit, if it is an actual problem and people are actively not talking about it,
right?
Yeah, because it's we don't want to deal with this. It's like then leaving his name out on purpose like that.
Yeah.
Would have been a way for her to say, "Oh yeah, and by the way, Dad's still mad because Bob married a Catholic."
Right.
So without saying in so many words, but which is a shame, but also not uncommon to have little things like this in the family.
So
yeah,
hopefully, if there's that tension there, we get to see some resolution of that tension. But
I mean, because that's his grandchild.
Yeah, that's it. Right. Yeah. It's the grandkid.
Of course, Laura's going to go with the baby. She's going to be like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to go play with the baby.
I'm going to go have a party over here. The Corys are making pudding. We've got the fried chicken out. Bob's having.
It's so funny because sometimes when my mom's about 4 hours away, so sometimes when they come visit, she will bring food.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, you're coming to my house.
Oh yeah.
And you're like, oh, don't bother cooking. I'll just bring it with me. But she's a really good cook, so it's okay. But I think that's so cute that she brought that out there with her too. Yeah. Brought dinner.
And the food associations too is, I don't know about you, but whenever I visited my grandparents, they didn't have to make certain things when we visited, but it was always an expectation. When I go, this will be in the refrigerator.
Right, yeah, that's true.
A certain thing, because the kids need that. So for me, it was cheese spread. My grandmother's cheese spread on my mother's side. Sweetie would make, I don't know if it's considered Midwestern. I don't really know if it's so popular, but there's certain food associations she'd have. So right now it's the summer, so we have a lot of zucchini. So she would actually fry a lot of zucchini in the pan, but she'd bread it. So she'd dip it in egg and then put flour on it, and then she'd fry it up in the pan. And I haven't seen really people doing that with zucchini these days. Usually it's just sauteed. She actually would do it sort of like you do with eggplant or something like that. So that was more her style. But when I was visiting my mother's mother, it was just got to be cheese spread. And then each of the grandkids each had their own things. So if it was the holiday and she knew this person was going to be here, she was making frozen pineapple salad, which I'm going to guess most people have never had. I do have these recipes, so I'm going to be making some of these things. Or ribbon salad. There was a lot of things in the 50s with Jell-O that survived with the families of, so it's not so popular now, but if it was popular with your family over all the years, they kept making it. So maybe we can bring back some of these old recipes. I'm gonna have to make some squash.
Oh, that would be really fun. That would be a fun episode someday.
Yeah, we'll go through.
Maybe when we get together, we could have a sweetie dinner.
Oh, for sure, sweeties. I do have one of the recipes from Sweetie from later on, which is really, really great. So I'll share that with you, Jamie, offline. I'll send that over to you so you have it. You have your little piece of Sweetie in the kitchen. And when we get to it in the letters, I'll share it with everybody else too. So to be continued with that. But
yes, Chester is, and now that you have pointed that out, Chester is noticeably absent.
He's noticeably absent from here. We have to read between the lines, and it's right there. Oh, and then there's one little note here. Love Sydney and me. Just a reminder here. Sydney is Lou's middle name. And of course, Sydney is his mother's name. So that's the signature.
And I like how she, all the letters that she writes to Jeanne, she always signs from her and Lou.
Right. All right. And we have one more letter to go here.
It feels like a bonus. It feels like a bonus day.
Yeah.
Episode 17 bonus. And so this is a letter from Sweetie to Jeanne.
To Jeanne, yeah. February 19th, 1944. Dear Cleo, your little Valentine was very nice and equally as clever. I'm sorry we didn't send any out to our own families, but I was sick and just let it slip by. I thought the one from M.A. was nice too. Lou bought me a nice box of Whitman Fairchild chocolates. I was so pleased, But you know me and my poor means of expression. I'm not sure I got it across to him. Did I tell you that he sent me 2 beautiful red roses on our 2nd anniversary, 2 months? How do you like that? He's not only a husband, he's a sweetheart as well. Okay, so it is just 2 months, but I'll bet it will last. She's really so excited that she got those 2 little red roses.
Yeah, she is.
And yes, sweetie, you did tell Jeanne already in the last letter.
I know, I was thinking that too.
Yeah. But then we also get a particular brand here that I think everybody's kind of still familiar with, which is the Whitman chocolates.
Yeah, you still find it today.
You can still find Whitman chocolates today. So I did a little research regarding the Whitman Chocolate Company, because here in Pennsylvania, we're very well known for Hershey. So,
yes.
Where there are supposedly where you can find some chocolate in Hershey. But the history of the Whitman Company, Whitman goes back to 1842. This company's been around for a long time.
Wow.
And it was founded by an individual named Stephen Whitman, so it's named after him, in Philadelphia. So I don't know what it is about Pennsylvanians and chocolate companies between Hershey and Whitman, but we seem pretty dominant here, Jamie, in the chocolate space.
If there's anything to be an expert or to be known for chocolate, I'll take it.
Yeah, so sounds like a good legacy from Pennsylvania. Whitman's was bought by a company called Pet Inc., which made evaporated milk back in the 1960s. So for at least 100 years, it was the Whitman Company. And then it gets acquired by this other company. They go through some different levels. It's bought by IC Industries. It becomes Whitman Corporation. There's some internal history there. But in 1993, it's acquired by Russell Stover. So that's another brand that we know. So eventually there's that merger, Russell Stover with Whitman. And then in July of 2014, it's acquired, Russell Stover, Whitman, and that whole legacy, by Lindt and I think Sprugli, if I'm saying it right, because it's got that diphthong in the name. But I think we've seen the Lindt chocolates, we see that brand a lot. So they're all associated.
They're good chocolate, yeah.
Yeah, really good chocolate. So if you work for Lindt and you're listening to the Love Sweetie podcast, feel free to send some chocolate back to the original place where it was created near Philadelphia. And Jamie would like some too in the southwestern.
Could you please send me some of this chocolate as well? Yes,
yeah.
Thank you.
So we are familiar. But I thought that, when we see these brands that have been around, back in the early letter, we had the Morel Company, the Morel Meat. And that's at Ottumwa. That was from the 1890s. That was eventually bought by Smithfield. It's really known for hams. And then Smithfield was later acquired. But we've heard some of these brands around. Maybe not Morel, but we've heard of Smithfield. In this case, Whitman, that brand name of the sampler box has survived all the way from the 1840s, which is pretty impressive.
That is impressive.
Do you know, this is the first time since we've been married that I've written letters at night. Probably wouldn't be doing it tonight if I hadn't managed to fall from his good graces. Lou was quite sick with the flu. He was in sick bay from Monday till Thursday. He's better, but he still carries a cough that leaves him a trifle weak after a siege of coughing. He sleeps better, though, and hasn't, for the last few nights, woke up to cough himself blue in the face. I had a touch of it, too, but I'm okay now. Mrs. Cory forwarded to you a letter from the Ottumwa Hospital. Did you get it? Mr. Cory was released from his job here on 15th February. He's enjoying a vacation until he receives his orders, which he hopes will take them to his beloved Texas, or else to the East Coast. Yeah, we talked about this in December. The Corys are going to be on their way out. They were sensing this was coming, so we get the confirmation right after Valentine's Day. Mr. Cory's done at the base. I guess no more free rides to the base for Sweetie.
Yeah, I guess now she's gonna have to be taking the bus. I think that was $3 a week or something.
I've been going up there to sew on that blue jumper dress with hopes that I'll be able to take it to Philadelphia when we go. I'm not doing too badly, I hope. After having had the flu, I've not had much ambition to clean the house, and it has gotten to the place where it is almost impossible to get through. I'll have to see what I can do about it tomorrow. I think Lou is secretly ashamed of the place, and of me for letting it get so tough looking. I'm kinda tired, so I'll cut this short with the promise to write more soon. Love, Sweetie, and Lou. I don't have any postage. I'll ask Lou to address these, so they can go free. Maybe he'll add a little to you. Dear Cleopatra, about all I have to say is hello. My regards to the family. I am feeling much better and will write to you a little later. George. Yeah. So just a little update.
They have a lot of little nicknames for each other.
They do. Yeah. And the reason we can tell, because there was a George that was around Ottumwa in mid-July, and the reason we can tell that this is Lou is because it's a handwritten letter, thankfully. And Lou has a very distinct handwriting. So I was able to determine that this is 100% Lou. He's just using a nickname. And especially for Jeanne, Cleopatra, whatever that's about. So
whatever that means.
Yeah, whatever
movie they saw together or whatever, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But he's been sick. Cute, though.
Yeah, and he was sick.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually like, well, so we're in January, February time period with these. Yep. And the good doctor tells us that the flu was not that bad.
Right, at least in Lacona.
So, I mean, yeah, so there was a, well, he said, it was starting to slow down and, that he had good luck with that. But you can see like poor Lou got it, and then Jeanne, and then Sweetie got it.
Right.
And then he actually ended up going to sick bay.
Right. He wound up going anyway.
He's like, I can't, I have to go. So yeah, so it must have been really bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was probably something going around the base. Honestly, if he'd gone to sick bay the first time, she probably would have had more time to do the chores around the house because she was taking care of him. So it's just balancing all of that time together. But it is what it is.
Well, and I know, and I can tell you right now that he was not ashamed of her.
No.
At all. He was like, I'm sick, you're sick. Like, I'm sure he understood, but I feel bad because that's what she put on herself.
Yeah, she's being self-conscious here.
But that's what, she was being a good wife. She's like, so that was nice. But yeah, so that brings us February of 44.
That brings us, close to the end of February of 44. Those 4 letters, we're going to pick up where we left off, continuing in 1944 in episode 18. I did want to take one moment. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, Jamie. I wanted to bring up the website here, just to bring up the album section for the people, especially that are watching the video version of this. If you're listening to the audio only version on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or one of the other channels, go check out www.lovesweetiepodcast.com. There have been some big updates to the website. I'm going to share it here, but I'll describe what's going on as we go. All right, there we are. If you click on Sweetie's scrapbook, I wanted to sort of really revamp everything, and you click on the photos. All you have to do is click on the image to get there. You can get into the various albums with regards to Sweetie. And they're very easy to navigate. Just follow the links as they indicate it. So we have the Demaree family, we have Sweetie at Parsons College, the wedding, some of the items, and some of the family heirlooms. There were just a couple I wanted to show here. I'm going to go ahead and click the album for the Demaree family. So it's a gallery of images that you get into with some descriptions. To see the full description, all you have to do is click the photo, and it'll open it up, and you can read the details on the family photos here. Some are photos that we haven't yet gone over with regards to the storyline because they predate the storyline. And then you have the choice of either Xing out of the page and going into each photo individually, or you can rotate through them all and view the album. And they're all in different categories. Like here's Chester and Laura. The other one that I wanted to bring up, because, and we can go back to Sweetie's scrapbook, we'll go back into the photos, is the one of the family heirlooms, because we were talking about this back, I believe, in episode 15, the marriage service book, and I said I wanted to make the PDF available of the marriage service. So if you navigate to the marriage service book in the photos of the family heirlooms, of course you can rotate through the photos of the heirlooms. Oh, and we have to talk about this in a moment. Oh, yeah. But with regards to the marriage service, at the bottom of the description, there's a link to the PDF. And if you click this, it'll open another window, and you can go ahead and take a look at the entire book. So I went ahead and made a PDF of all the images of all the pages. So if you want to see, if you want to see the entire book and how the order of marriage was done for the Presbyterian Church back then, you can. It's not a long read, but you can scroll through. And also inscribed is some information about the family. This was on the back of the book. A card for Samuel Graham, which notes him at Bailey Banks and Biddle, which was a jewelry company in Philadelphia. The article from the paper that the bride is descendant of Matlack, and then the end of the book. So individuals can take their own time to go through and view that PDF if they're curious as to the orders for the marriage service from the Presbyterians at the beginning of the 1900s. Yeah, and then this surfaced, and there was a little YouTube short about this. And for people listening audio only, Sweetie kept her wedding cake topper all the years, and
it's a little sailor,
the little sailor,
and his flight.
Yeah, it's a beautiful wedding cake topper, and the go to page link here goes to the wedding album directly, so that you can then look at the topper and then go look at the wedding photos to compare.
And see it in the wedding photos.
Yeah, it was.
And you just found this.
Just found it. I was going through. I was looking for more photos, and asking ye shall receive when it comes to Sweetie. Mostly photos from the 50s and other things like that. But I was going through a box of sewing supplies of all things. It's interesting in these letters. We were just talking about how she's sewing. She's hoping she's doing a good job in the blue dress. Sweetie would come to sew a lot of various things, as did many people in that generation. They were expected to be able to fix things if they needed to. Remember how she was fixing her stockings at college and all of this.
I remember.
It was like a box of zippers, and I felt this figure. I reached into the box, and I'm like, that's not a button, And I pull it out, and out comes the wedding cake topper, which I immediately identified.
Which we just had the wedding episode.
We just had the wedding episode. So yeah, great to see that. But anyway, for those that are enjoying the content, by all means, please check out the website, because then you'll get to see all of this excellent content. You can take your time looking through the pages of the marriage service and the photos and really examining them there, and the descriptions.
And it's so nice to have, in my head when I'm reading through the letters to and you're reading about people to kind of see what they look like, what they look like. You can picture them in your head, like this was who was here. Yeah. This is what, yeah. So it's nice to have the photos to go along with the letters.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And the other thing is, Love Sweetie Podcast is also on Instagram. So a lot of the photos have been posted there, and some, I guess they're called Instagram Reels, really popular. So if you are big on Instagram, please follow the Love Sweetie Podcast on Instagram as well. But other than that, please like, share, and subscribe. Leave comments on these videos. We'd love to get the feedback from everybody who's listening. Again, we know about 40% of the individuals that watch the videos on YouTube are actually subscribed, and 60% are not. So if you're one of the 60% that's listening, please subscribe to the channel.
Subscribe.
Yeah.
They're going to keep coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And with that, that's the end of this episode. We look forward to resuming with episode 18.
Yes, we'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.